Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Grow Through It podcast. My name is Julia, and today's episode is all about communication, how we show up in conversations, especially during conflict. I'll be sharing how I used to handle communication in a way that was not healthy or productive, like exploding when I was feeling overwhelmed or feeling misunderstood, and how I've learned to express myself in a much calmer and healthier way. We will also talk about different communication styles and how to make room for each other's needs. Whether it's romantic relationships, relationships with friends or family, or in the workplace, this episode is here to help you communicate better and connect deeper. So let's get into it. If you've listened to my previous episodes, you can probably guess why I didn't have the best communication skills. I didn't really have any good examples of what healthy communication looked like. I was around people who either gave me the silent treatment, gaslit me, manipulated me, or yelled at me. Obviously, none of these things are healthy forms of communication, and when you are dealing with people like this, it makes it very difficult to communicate to them because they don't respond well. This would cause a lot of frustration for me, especially the gaslighting, so I would often yell as a way to try and get my point across, or I would shut down and just agree that I was wrong even though I knew that I wasn't. I was so tired of arguing that I would just want it to be over and nothing would actually get resolved. I'm not proud of how I communicated. When I met Paul, I couldn't believe how calm and respectful he was during disagreements. Over the last few years, he has really taught me what healthy communication actually is, and I feel safe to express my feelings and emotions to him and others now. I also am going to therapy, I read a lot of personal development books and listen to podcasts, and I've learned how to communicate better through these things. So now when I get into a disagreement, I am much calmer, or if things are getting a bit heated and I can feel myself getting frustrated, I have methods to help me calm down. Before I get into these methods and tips for healthy communication, I think it's important to talk about the different communication styles. So one communication style is needing to resolve things right away. I feel like I do fall into this category for the most part, but I also fall into the other category as well. Some people need to talk about things right away for them to feel safe. Often, this is people who have a tendency toward an anxious attachment style. I know for me, if I leave things too long, I get anxious and start to overthink the situation. I feel like I need to initiate the conversation right away. I will say, though, I wasn't always like this. It took time for me to feel safe enough to express how I was feeling right away. My default was to go into silent mode and try and think about it first. When Paul and I first started dating, he could tell when I was upset, but I wouldn't say anything. He would often have to kind of pry it out of me. I feel like this is because of my history with unhealthy communication, and I would be afraid to tell him how I was feeling. He never made me feel unsafe, but I was unsafe for so many years prior to him, it was kind of conditioned in me. Now I tell him right away because I know I will be met with kindness and understanding. So now I tell him how I feel right away and I want to resolve things quickly. Again, if I don't at least bring it up right away, I ruminate in it and I overthink the entire situation. So majority of the time I bring it up right away. However, I do ask myself if this is an actual issue or if it's my past trying to create an untrue story about my present. I have to really think about who Paul is as a person and think about what his intentions actually are versus how I was treated in the past. It sucks that I have to do this, but it is normal if you were in a toxic relationship, especially if it was as long as mine was. If the conversation starts getting a bit frustrating and I can feel myself getting angry or upset, we usually decide to walk away and cool down for a bit. Sometimes that only takes me like 5 minutes, other times I need a bit longer. This is the other communication style, needing to walk away. This is sometimes typical for someone with an avoidant attachment style. I really don't think I could walk away for a longer period, even a few hours seems like a lot to me, but many people need this time to process what happened and think about it clearly. I think Paul likes to take his time thinking about things, but I feel like we've found a good middle ground for both of us. Both of these communication styles are valid and there is nothing wrong with them. You just have to know what your partner's communication style is, or whoever you're communicating with, and your own, and find a way to meet in the middle, or at least understand each other's needs. With walking away, though, I want to note that I do think it's important to still make sure the other person knows that they are loved still. Saying something like, I love you and I want to resolve this. I just need a bit of time to think about this so I can make sure we resolve this in a healthy way. Reassuring them that you love or respect them, but just need a bit of time to think, will help the other person feel safe, especially if they have an anxious attachment style. Paul and I never go to bed upset with each other. Even if things aren't fully resolved, we still hug and kiss each other goodnight and say I love you. This is really important to me because, again, otherwise I do overthink things and sometimes go to the worst case scenario in my head because I get worried. So make sure if you do need time to think, you still give your partner reassurance if they need it. We also sometimes feel a bit off but don't know why. When this happens, we usually just tell each other, I'm feeling weird or off right now, but I'm not sure why yet. If we know it's about something outside of our relationship, we communicate to each other that it's about work or friends or family and has nothing to do with the other person. Typically, when we feel off, our energy is also off, so we want to make sure the other person knows that it has nothing to do with them. This builds trust and emotional safety within our relationship. When you are dealing with a conflict with someone who is not your partner, maybe it's a family member, friend, or someone at work, you can still apply some of what we discussed. Try and understand their communication style. Ask them if they'd like to talk about it now or if they need some time to think. Make sure to tell them that you want to resolve this and you respect them, but need time to think about it if that's what you need. If you want to talk about something right away, at least bring it up and then talk about how you can handle it. Again, if either of you needs to walk away temporarily, that is okay. Communicate to them if something feels off. Don't just change your energy without explaining why, or at least explain why after the fact. You can do these things with anyone you have to communicate with. Now that we've looked at these two common communication styles, let's talk about what happens when we don't manage our emotions, when we explode. This could look like raising your voice, saying things you don't mean, or emotional overwhelm. This is obviously not healthy or productive. This can happen when the other person is dealing with heavy issues, the person has not been taught healthy communication and cannot regulate their emotions on their own, the person does not walk away from the conversation when they should, or maybe they're just an abusive person. If you or your partner explodes on the other, I highly recommend talking to a therapist about it and learning new ways to communicate with each other. If this continues, it can cause major issues down the road, so it's important to address it, even if it's uncomfortable. If explosions do happen, make sure to take accountability if it was you and repair that trust. So how can we be healthier in our communication? One of the biggest lessons Paul taught me was to pause before reacting. He always takes his time before he responds to anything. This used to make me a bit anxious because I always felt like I needed to respond right away. But he has taught me to slow down and really think about how I feel about something before I speak. This has helped us have much calmer and more mature conversations. Another thing you can do is use I statements instead of blame. I actually learned this technique when I went to college. Instead of saying, you did this or you never do this, you can say, I feel hurt when, or I'm feeling a little upset. When you use I statements, it helps them understand how you're feeling without feeling like you're blaming them for something. When we start the conversation with, you did this, their guard immediately goes up because they want to defend themselves. It is also important to validate the other person's feelings, even if you disagree. Sometimes Paul and I don't agree on something, and that is okay. But instead of arguing our point over and over again, we accept the other person's viewpoint and try our best to understand where they are coming from. We may not agree, but we can understand, at least to some extent, why the other person is feeling that way. Staying calm and kind is also extremely important. There should be absolutely no name calling, no yelling, and no threats involved. If this happens, it heightens everything and can make the other person feel unsafe or unloved. This is not healthy and should be addressed. Yelling sometimes can happen when emotions are heightened, but it should not be frequent and should not include the other things I mentioned, like name calling or threats. You should always respect each other no matter what. Asking questions is another great way to understand each other's perspective. Ask why they feel that way, how they came to that conclusion, has this ever happened before, and what could you do better in the future? You can also ask questions to help them gain a different perspective. Ask them, have you ever thought of it this way? Or, I wonder if this would help. I will warn you though, sometimes people don't want solutions in the heat of the moment, and I'm often one of those people. I like solutions when I am calm and emotionally distant from the problem, not when I'm already upset about it. When I'm upset, I just want to talk about how I feel and get some reassurance and love. You may also have to set boundaries when necessary. I have told many people in my life that the word fat triggers me. I told them in a calm way that I would appreciate them not using that word with me as it triggers a negative emotional reaction in me. Obviously, I can't control how people speak, and I hear that word often, but with certain people, it was more triggering to me than hearing it from others. So I told them this, and they responded quite well. They don't use that word around me anymore. Another thing you need to make sure to do is to communicate your needs to the person. When Paul and I have a disagreement, he tends to be quiet and think about things, which, as I mentioned, are normal responses. However, he also does not have any physical touch with me during this either, so the combination of no physical touch and him being quiet can cause a bit of a panic in me sometimes. I have told him that when we are having a disagreement, especially because most of them are pretty chill and we never raise our voices with each other, I'd appreciate some sort of physical touch from him, whether it's a hand on my leg, holding hands, or just being near each other. This calms me down right away. Touch is something that can calm your nervous system. So maybe you don't want touch from your partner during a fight, but you can even just put your own hand on your stomach, and this can help calm you down. But I have communicated this to him. I also have told him that when I'm upset about something, I don't need solutions right away. All I want is a big hug and for him to tell me everything is going to be okay. There was a time where I did not tell him this, so when I would get upset about something, he would offer solutions instead of affection and reassurance. This would cause me to get frustrated and not feel comforted. But he is not a mind reader, and if I know what I need in that moment, it's my job to communicate that to him. It's very, very typical for men to want to fix the problem, but often women just want to talk about it, and you may need to remind your partner of this. When it comes to conflict, it is also crucial that you talk about it in person or at least over the phone with them. Texting can cause major miscommunication issues and should be avoided. People can read your text in a completely different tone than you meant it, or read into the messages you sent. Talking in person is the easiest way to avoid miscommunication. If things ever do get heated and I can feel myself getting upset, like I said, I walk away for a bit. Just the other night, we had a disagreement about something, and I could feel my heart rate increase and the anxiety set in. He took a shower, and I wrote in my notes app how I was feeling. I never used to journal, and whenever anyone said to just journal about your feelings, I thought it was kind of stupid. I thought there was no way that would do anything, but I was wrong. The last couple times we've had a bit of a fight, all I did was step away and journal how I felt, and my anxiety was instantly gone. Just getting my emotions out with no interruption and no room for judgment, because no one is reading it but me, helps me think a lot clearer. Then I can go back into the conversation with a clear head and talk about things in a healthier way. In addition to journaling, I also sometimes meditate or do deep breathing. I walk away even if it's to the bathroom and I take 5 deep breaths. This also calms me down, but journaling is the thing that has helped me the most. Now, you may not want to walk away, especially if your form of communication is to resolve things right away, but like I mentioned earlier, this can cause you to explode. You can become so frustrated that you say things you don't mean or speak in a disrespectful way. Before it ever gets to this point, walk away and cool down. It may be uncomfortable, but it's better to feel a bit anxious about it than to do or say something that you will regret. Exploding can also be caused by a buildup of unspoken feelings, which is why it's important to talk about issues rather than avoiding conflict. Although most of the methods I talked about can be applied to relationships beyond your romantic one, let's get more specific on communication with other people in your life. Let's start with family, as this can be a hard one for many people. Sometimes we feel like we revert back to a younger version of ourselves around our family. This can be because of how our family communicates and treats us. Maybe your family members guilt trip you, treat you like you're still a child, or there's a lack of boundaries there. It's important to try your best to understand why they are doing this. Maybe they truly mean well, but do not have the tools or knowledge to act differently. I often say to myself, this person is doing the best they can with the knowledge and tools they have. This does not excuse any poor behavior, but it can help you understand their intentions better and help you stay more calm. I know of people's family members who just aren't able to talk about their emotions, and that is okay. They are never going to be perfect. All you can do is accept them for who they are and communicate to them how you feel, knowing that just because you tell them what your needs are doesn't mean they will change their behavior. But at least you did your part, and that's all you can really do. You may also have to set boundaries with your family and not feel guilty about it. Some topics are off the table for certain people in my family, or I tell them I don't want to talk about that right away. You can say something like, I don't want to talk about that right now, but we can talk about it later. Or if it's something you don't want to discuss, you can say, I'm not comfortable talking about this, but I love you and I'm okay. When it comes to friendships, this can be even more difficult. I know especially for women, sometimes we avoid telling each other that something is wrong to avoid conflict. We may have unspoken expectations, and that can lead to misunderstandings. You can bring something up without making it confrontational, though. Say something like, I really value our friendship and I want to share how I'm feeling. Or, can I be honest about something that's been on my mind? I also have sometimes felt like we are growing apart in our friendship, but me avoiding talking about it causes more distance. Maybe they are just going through a tough time but don't want to ask for help. You have to be direct and check in with your friends rather than just assuming. It's always best to ask the person what is going on and express how you feel. If you need to confront a friend about an issue, you can let them know how you feel without placing blame. Again, use I statements. You may also have to set boundaries with friends about time or energy or how they're treating you. When it comes to workplace conflict, this can be tricky. My advice would be to speak respectfully, but advocate for yourself without sounding defensive. If something has been bothering you, let your boss or whoever it is know that you've noticed this and would like to come up with solutions to handle it together. If a coworker is making you feel frustrated, again, you may have to walk away and cool down before talking to them. It's also extremely important to set boundaries at work. You don't need to answer emails or do more work outside of your hours if it's not required. Keep work at work and don't let it trickle into your daily life. For example, maybe a coworker or your boss keeps messaging you after hours about non-urgent tasks. You can reply by saying, I saw your message and I will get back to you when I'm back in the office tomorrow morning. This simple boundary can really protect your peace. When you communicate in a healthy way, it helps reduce burnout and resentment in all areas of your life. I could talk about communication all day because it's something I am very passionate about. I truly think it is one of the most important things for any relationship and can truly make or break the relationship. I encourage you to reflect on your own communication style and do so in a non-judgmental way. It's okay if you don't have great communication skills yet. Just a few years ago, I didn't either. But I learned how to do this in a healthier way, and I continue to gain more skills and patience when it comes to communication. I also encourage you to ask your partner or family member or friend what their communication style is and try and find a middle ground for you both if it's the opposite one from you. Share your experiences or takeaways with me by sending me a DM on Instagram or tagging me on your stories. You can find me at growthroughit.pod. If you have any questions or want to suggest a topic idea, you can do this anonymously by using the link in the show notes. If you enjoyed this episode, rate and review it and share it with someone you think would benefit from it. Thank you so much for listening, and remember that you are worthy. See you next time.